Welcome back. Tea leaves. Both Republicans and Democrats are looking at special elections like the one taking place here in Sarasota as an indication how both parties will fare in next year's midterm. We know who the Republican will be, James Buchanan, the son of Vern. But the Democrats have an interesting decision to make. Do they go with Margaret Good, the well-connected attorney who's raised an impressive amount of money, or Ruta Giuliani, a local business owner who has earned the backing of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party? And joining us for more is Democratic political activist Gabriel Hammond and Sarasota Republican State Committee man Christian Ziegler. Gabriel, let me start with you because as I set up there, we don't know exactly how it's going to turn out tonight, although we see what the trend is right now. But Ruta Giuliani did attract a lot of support from the progressive wing of the party, including the Progressive Caucus of Florida. And there really is a schism these days, is there not, between the progressives and Democratic activists like yourself who have been in this for a while?
Alan, you're correct. What happened in this race was an extension of what unfolded with the national presidential election, where you had the most liberal leaners of the Democratic Party fighting the moderate centrists that were represented by Hillary Clinton, and then you had the Bernie Sanders folks to the left of them. So it's still unfolding within the Democratic Party, this internecine war between, do we want a $15 million minimum wage? Do we want a $15 minimum wage, or do we want to slowly scale up the minimum wage? Those are the type of conversations that are happening within the Democratic Party right now.
Are you concerned because, as we saw in the presidential election, there were people who were so dedicated to Bernie Sanders, they were Bernie or bust, and they basically said that they were not going to come out for Hillary Clinton. Many of them in the end did, but are you concerned when you have a special election like this one, the progressives, are just going to stay home if their candidate doesn't win?
Well, the battle between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, got fairly vicious at the end of that primary, with the Clinton folks sort of undermining Bernie Sanders through the Democratic National Committee. That level of animosity didn't occur in this special election for a state House of Representatives seat. So I see right now the Democrats are real fired up with Trump in the White House, so we'll probably see a lot of enthusiasm on that side of the aisle going into the general election in February.
Christian, let me ask you about this, because this House district does encompass some of the most Democratic areas of Sarasota County, and given what Gabriel said in terms of there is a lot of passion on the Democrat side right now, does that give any Republicans pause in terms of you're really going to have to work your tails off to win this race at this stage?
Well, anytime you have a special election, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen. It all comes down to turnout, and it's always low voter turnout typically in these races. So you have to have a good ground game, you have to have good messaging, you have to reach out to voters. But when you look at this specific district, this is a district Trump won by 5 or 6 points last year. And as we were talking about, there definitely is a rift in the local Democratic Party. I know a lot of them. And you hear the establishment and the money guys versus the grassroots and the purists. So there is something there that needs to be patched up, and I don't think James Buchanan's going to have that problem on the Republican side. He'll get the entire Republican support from all different spectrums of the Republican Party.
Is it a mistake for folks on either side of the aisle to look at a special election like this and try to read the tea leaves in terms of the midterms next year? You saw it take place with the special election for the state senate down in Miami. Mm-hmm. There's another one in Tampa. People are trying to see what's happening now. You could drive yourself crazy doing that.
Yeah, exactly, you could. So, you had the Georgia 6 election, Republican won that. Then you had down in Miami, and a Democrat won that. And after both of them, the message was, oh, Trump, his numbers are affecting everything. One was everyone supports the president still. The other one was president's in trouble. The party's in trouble next year. I think when you look at these, especially these special elections, again, Sarasota, there's going to be, I don't know how many expected, maybe 20,000 people that are going to possibly vote in this. I don't think it's a good indication nationally what's going to happen.
Right. Before we go to break, let's look at some updated numbers as they are coming in here. As you can see on the right now, Margaret Good has jumped up to a big lead, 75.41% over Ruta Giuliani, who is at 24.59%. We will continue to update you on the numbers coming up. We're just getting warmed up. We'll have more on the Democratic primary in House 72 right after we check the First Alert weather. Welcome back. We're talking about the special election in Sarasota's District 72 House seat. It is primary day for the Democrats, and joining us for more is Democratic political activist Gabriel Hammond and Sarasota Republican State Committee man Christian Ziegler. The results are still coming in as we speak, but our buddy Zach Anderson at the Herald Tribune, he reported it looks like an insurmountable lead for Margaret Good, and apparently Margaret Good just arrived at her campaign headquarters, and she claims there is not enough votes left to change the outcome. Anybody surprised?
Not too surprised. You know, I had the race at a 65-35 split between Juniari and Good, or a 60-40 split, because, you know, the folks who had supported Bernie initially are really amped up as well as all the Democrats in District 72. But Good ran a traditional campaign. It was well financed, small donations all the way up to $1,000
Can I stop you
level.
for a second? Traditional campaign includes televised debates, which we do not have here. And I was going to ask you both about this later, but I'll ask about it now since you brought it up. Yeah. How does Margaret Good try to get James Buchanan to debate if he can claim, well, you weren't able to, you did not debate your primary challenger?
You know, it's a tough position to be in. I don't necessarily think I would have advised that if I was consulting for that campaign. But when you are in the winner's seat and you're about to win a race, you do want to selectively choose which public forums you appear in, because you want to make sure you don't personally make a gaffe, and you also don't want to give your opponent who's far back in behind your lead an opportunity to bludgeon you on TV if they do have that opportunity.
Democrats love to debate.
Well, you know, if you look into the general now, and you have to parse words here. I know Margaret Good was all throughout the district debating and appearing at forums that were less charged. And for some reason, Mr. Buchanan in the general election has initiated a blanket policy that he won't be appearing at any public forum. So I'll let Christian address that.
And Christian, I'm going to ask you that question because, you know, I understand what Gabriel said in terms of if you have the money, if you think you're going to win, but don't voters in this district and everywhere have the right to see the Republican, the Democrat, the Libertarian, or anyone debate each other? Because after all, they're supposed to be going to Tallahassee to debate their cases in the legislature.
Yeah, personally, I'm a big fan of debates. I mean, no matter what the situation is. But when you look at this, Margaret Good really stepped in it, and it was probably the definition of short-sighted, because by coming out in a primary that she was most likely going to win anyway because she had the money and she had the network behind her, you know, the establishment, she could have had the debate and it probably wouldn't have been an issue. Even if she did make a mistake, she could probably overcome it. But now what that's done is it's opened up where on the Republican side, if she's not going to do a debate in her primary that's contested, why should we do a debate with her? So it gives kind of cover, and whether you agree with it or not, that's kind of the reality.
Why shouldn't Mr. Buchanan debate his opponent, whether or not that happened? After all, Vern Buchanan is his dad, and he has debated every Democrat every time he has run for election or re-election, no matter how far back they were or how little money. Vern Buchanan debated them.
He has, and you know, that's a question you'd have to ask James. But you know, from their campaign, from what I've heard, is they're going directly to the voters. So I know they have an army of people that are out there going door to door. James is going out there door to door. They're going to be having their own events. They're going to be reaching out directly to voters. So I understand the concern with the debate. But you know, the question is when you have a debate, where do you have the debate? If it's not on this channel, people get upset, right? If it's on another channel, the other channel gets upset. If it's at a forum, some other group gets upset. So where do you draw the line? But you know,
I would say if you want the maximum exposure for your candidate, it would be on this broadcast. But if you have no debates and you have no joint appearances, it's really kind of left, is it not, to those who have the loudest voice, who could spend the most amount of money for paid advertising or mailers, and it kind of robs the voters from seeing both candidates challenging each other live with some pressure on?
Well, I think the voters, at the end of the day, they care what are people's positions, what are the candidates' positions on issues, and what is their background. And that's what they're going to look at. And you don't necessarily need to have a debate to figure that out. I mean, you could literally go on their website, you can go to their events that they're speaking at, and you can hear directly from them. So You know, I think back in the day when we only had ABC, CBS, NBC, debates were very powerful. Now with social media, you can connect directly with the voters and share your message.
KP, you're not seeing both candidates pitted against each other like both of you are debating this issue right now with each other. Does that not rob the voters who are the decision makers from seeing how their elected leaders would handle themselves under pressure?
Well, it's so characteristic of the current political climate. We're debating about having a debate. But at the end of the day, from what I know from reading articles about this race and talking to the campaigns, Margaret Good is offering to debate her general election opponents, which includes a Libertarian and a Republican, Mr. Buchanan. So it'll be up to the press and the media to apply enough pressure to where all the candidates appear.
I think that's a clear indication when you look at strategy, and I've worked on a lot of campaigns, and as you have, that's a clear indication that Margaret Good was confident in winning the primary. That's why she turned down debates. Now looking at the general, she does not feel like she's the front runner, and that's why she's asking for debates.
How does this set up here? You have, I know there's a disparity in terms of how much Margaret Good has raised in terms of campaign contributions as opposed to James Buchanan, but still relatively, Margaret Good has been well financed. She has the backing of a lot of Democrats around here who have contributed to her campaign. I'm sure the state parties will get involved. Is this any different than any other setup or general election in terms of this kind of race?
Yeah, you know, a special election is exactly that. It's special, and it usually connotes a lower turnout than a general election during a presidential year or a gubernatorial off year. Of the campaigns I have ran on the Republican and Democratic side, there are usually 3 phases to a campaign. 1 is identifying your potential voters. 2 is communicating with them and persuading them that you're the right guy or gal for the job. And the 3rd is making sure they get to the polls on election day or return their ballots via mail. Because we have such a compressed time frame, we're going to see folks appealing to the base of the Republican and Democratic sides, folks who are going to vote in any election if there is an election, and making sure they get to the polls, so there'll be less persuasion and more motivating those base voters.
Christian, we're running out of time in this segment, but in terms of, and we'll continue this, but in terms of the issues, what would you say are the issues that will be centered to this election?
This is a traditional Republican, conservative Republican versus liberal Democrat race. I mean, you have Margaret Good, she's pro-abortion, anti-Second Amendment, she's pro-spending, pro-higher taxes. And then you have James Buchanan, and she's a lawyer as well. She's an attorney. And then you have James Buchanan, who's a businessman. He's pro-life, he's pro-Second Amendment, he's anti-tax, lower spending. So that's what they're going to debate on with those issues. And I think when you look at this, there's a lot of voters that are still out there that want to see people support our president, especially in this district. This is a district he won. And I think that that's going to really resonate with those voters, and that's what we're going to see happen.
Okay, we have new numbers coming in as we speak. Thank you, Haley. The latest update, with 97% of precincts reporting, Margaret Good has 72.4% of the vote to Ruta Giuliani's 27.60% of the vote. I think it's fair to say that Margaret Good is the winner of the Democratic primary, and we congratulate her. We'll have to take a quick break. Final thoughts when we return. Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Gabriel, I'm going to give you a first shot because according to Christian, typical race, Margaret Good is a liberal, for abortion, against Second Amendment, and she's a lawyer.
Well, you know, that's the rhetoric that's going to come out of the right-leaning wing of the Republican Party because, you know, if you're running a smart campaign, you want to turn out your base in those types of terms, get people out to vote. In terms of the district overall, which spans south of University Parkway, north of Laurel Road, with Siesta Key included, downtown Sarasota's cut out, folks are concerned about funding public education because we have an A-rated school district in this county. And they're also concerned about environmental preservation, ensuring that oil drilling off the coast does not occur under any circumstances whatsoever. So you're going to hear a lot about public education, a lot about environmental protection, and that's going to get Democrats out to vote. Other things will get Republicans out to vote.
Well, let me ask you this, because, I mean, we've been talking about abortion and abortion rights. This legislature tried to pass a law restricting a woman's right to get an abortion. This is something that the legislature keeps going back to. Why not, if Democrats feel strongly about this, put this front and center?
You know, that messaging may make its way into the campaign, and supporting Planned Parenthood and preserving a woman's right to choose, which is now been decided by the Supreme Court for decades, that is representative of the district. If you look back at Republicans and Democrats who have represented District 72, going back to Shirley Brown in the 90s and then Alex Miller most recently, those were all pro-choice women. So we'll see what happens.
Christian, let me ask you this. What chance do you think that this race, again, becomes a statewide, if not national, race, because everybody wants, as we mentioned earlier, to know how this sets up for the midterms?
The Democrats will try to do that because they're trying to find any wins that they can and something that they can spotlight after having a historic loss last year in Donald Trump's presidential run. So you'll see that from the Democrats. On the Republican side, again, I don't think that this race, which is a special election, low voter turnout, is really going to tell you much.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app does not work, that's because it is expired. Just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank both our guests for being here tonight. Democratic political activist Gabriel Hammond and Sarasota Republican State Committee man Christian Ziegler.